Good evening. When the Jefferson School African American Heritage Center was first entrusted with the Robert E. Lee statue, I didn't feel called. I felt summoned, and there's a difference. My name is Leah Puryear, and I serve as board chair of the Jefferson School African American Heritage Center. And I want to tell you how I got here because it matters for what you are about to witness. I was not born an activist. That word in my family belonged to others. My mother, Maria Wilson, and her family worked to integrate the local movie theater in East Orange, New Jersey. My husband, Paul Puryear, spent his life opening doors and pushing communities towards fairness. Our son, Eugene, organized students and helped them understand that showing up was not an option. I watched my family and understood something I have carried ever since. History is not something you passively inherit. It is something you engage, challenge, and help reshape. And so I work to build it even if I don't claim the label. The belief is that belief is what has brought me to this institution. It all started with a phone call from then Assistant City Manager Rochelle Small Tony. She said, "Leah, I need you to come to City Hall. A developer wants to buy the Jefferson School building and turn it into condominiums." I went, I spoke during public comment, and I kept coming back. 10 years later, I have the privilege of chairing the board of this center. Paul would have something to say about that, as would Eugene. And if you knew my mother, Militant Maria, you know she definitely would have an opinion. And then the Heritage Center was given a statue. The Robert E. Lee statue never haunted my dreams. I grew up in the South. I knew what it meant and who it was for. But in August of 2017, this community, our community, bled. Heather Heyer was killed on our streets. I will not ask you to relive those days. You were here. You know what they cost. What I will tell you is what I kept asking myself in the aftermath, a question I don't think gets asked often enough. My question is, what do we do now? Because if we simply remove the statue and move on, we have not reckoned with anything. We only have rearranged the furniture. So we ask something different. Should this statue exist? What can we make from it? Our truth, what do we learn from what stood before us? How do we transform something rooted in division into something that invites reflection, that cultivates life? The answer became swords into plowshares. The phrase comes from the book of Isaiah. They will beat their swords into plowshares. It is a vision of transformation, taking what was once used to warn and reshaping it into something that can cultivate life. Isaiah didn't say, bury them. He didn't say, pretend they were never swords. He said, transform them with your hands, with intention, and with the full knowledge of what they were. That is exactly what this project is. We took the bronze and the burden, and we chose to make something meaningful. From one statue, 3 distinct visions. 3 artists who looked directly at a painful public symbol, held it, examined it, and imagined something the original makers never intended, something true and something more. Our Heritage Center was giving something heavy, full of painful memory. We took it, we held it, and today we begin to pour it into something new. The artists you're about to hear from answered our call for a reason. They saw that what we saw, this is not the end of a story, it is just the beginning. My mother and Paul taught me you don't wait for someone else to build community, you believe in it. Eugene taught me that showing up is not an option. Rochelle taught me that a single phone call can change the direction of your life. Today is that kind of a moment. Thank you to our artists. Thank you to our partners. Thank you to everyone who believed this was possible before they could see it. Isaiah said, beat your swords into plowshares. This, right here, right now, is what we are exactly doing. Welcome to Swords into Plowshares, Recast, Reclaimed. I would now like to introduce to you Dr. Jelaine Schmidt. Jelaine.
Thank you, Sister Leah. Good evening, Charlottesville. Thank you for your support for the past decade. Warm welcome to our guests here. I'm going to reflect a little bit together about the history that we've been through for the past decade or so. And if you hear your name or your role called out, please raise your hand and so that we can acknowledge everyone here. So we often, there are so many places we could begin this discussion about race in public place in Charlottesville. Need to, acknowledge Charlene Green's contribution on the dialogue on race. Let's give that. I believe it was Kristen Zakas who first suggested in 2012, to much consternation, that perhaps these monuments should be removed. So thank you, Kristen. 2014, Melvin Edwards created a model for a monument for Vinegar Hill, which was the neighborhood around here, which was destroyed by urban renewal. So we've been thinking about race and place in this community for some time. And then in 2016, as many of you know, Zion Bryant, young high school student, African-American activist, started a petition to get rid of the Confederate statues. Zai, are you here? Where? Do not see Zai, but let's give her a hand. Who here now signed that petition? Can you raise your hand if you did? You folks, okay, all right. So as I took that petition to City Council, which appointed the Blue Ribbon Commission on Race Memorials and Public Spaces to consider what to do with those statues. And do we have any BRC, Blue Ribbon Commission, commissioners in the house here? If you can raise your hands. Okay, we got one. John. Frank, where are you? Where's Frank? Frank over here. Andrea, right here. Anybody else? Got anybody else? Yeah, so thank you for your service. And usually a commission is where good ideas get sent to die a quiet, bureaucratic death. Usually a commission holds boring, sparsely attended meetings, writes and submits a dry report. The commissioning body thanks the commission, and the report is filed away to collect dust on a shelf, and it seldom leads to anything substantive. But the Charlottesville community breathed life into the Blue Ribbon Commission. 2016 was a prolonged engagement process for us. We met every 2 weeks for hours-long public meetings, sometimes calmly, sometimes it was a cuss and discuss, as I call it. Who here attended Blue Ribbon Commission meetings? Can you raise your hand? All right, a few here. I cannot overstate the importance of the fact that our local 2016 Blue Ribbon Commission conversations coincided with a xenophobic national presidential campaign. The hateful vitriol at the national level was a stark message to us in Charlottesville as we considered what was at stake. Who belongs? Who's welcome? We were reflecting, some of us for the first time, about what narratives were being communicated by our public spaces. During the Blue Ribbon Commission, we were learning in public, which was very vulnerable. It also carried a social cost. Did anyone here get into any debates with friends, neighbors, colleagues? Can you raise your hand if you did? Wow, okay, all right. There's a social cost here, and many of us, I was certainly learning a lot more about Civil War history and the history of slavery in our area. I'd kind of researched that in places afar, in other places in America, but not in my own backyard. So I was learning a lot too, And also about how and when these statues were placed in our community, and about Jim Crow, and about Virginia's Public Assemblies Act of 1926. That was 100 years ago, which was the law that mandated racial segregation. And also about African American land ownership in Charlottesville. And sometimes during the BRC meetings, it was painful to hear how lost cause propaganda had poisoned our public discourse, And it seemed at the time that the majority of the public, or kind of self-styled moderate voices of reason, supported maintaining the statues in the name of teaching history. There were others of us, racial justice activists, who believed that there are better ways of teaching history than maintaining white supremacist relics in our parks. So we mobilized and pressed our democratically elected leaders. Who here attended city council meetings during those days? Raise your hands. Okay, all right. Was anyone here asked to leave a city council meeting? Oh, I see a couple hands. Okay. Just an aside to our guests, National Public Radio once broadcast a story on Charlottesville City Council meetings because they were so raucous. We have a lot of civic engagement here. But in early 2017, by a narrow margin, City Council voted to remove the statues. And are Kristen Zakis and Wes Bellamy in the house? Can you please raise your hand? Thank you. Thank you for your leadership. But Charlottesville's decision to remove harmful monuments came at a price. The city was sued. Meanwhile, white supremacists repeatedly gathered in our parks in order to, quote unquote, defend the statues. Racial justice activists who had organized the progressive turnout to the Blue Ribbon Commission meetings the year before pivoted in 2017 to anti-fascist organizing. We planned counter-protests because we didn't want white supremacist messages or statues to be in our parks uncontested. Who here in the room has ever counter-protested a racist rally here in town? Oh, good, seeing lots of hands, that's great. During the 2017 Summer of Hate Fascists violently attacked rank-and-file community members and even killed Heather Heyer. The trauma that our community suffered shocked the nation and reverberated internationally. Across the world, communities removed symbols of exclusion from their local shared public spaces. Statues of colonizers, slave traders, and Confederates were taken down everywhere, except here in Charlottesville, the epicenter of the debate. We were prohibited by a century-old Virginia state law and by a civil lawsuit. The community was really frustrated. So in 2018, Andrea Douglas and I decided we had to do something to promote public education. We started giving walking tours of our downtown parks to teach the community about how notions of race are imposed onto place. We planned and led week-long community civil rights pilgrimage. We gathered soil at the lynching site of John Henry James and took that to the Equal Justice Initiative Memorial in Montgomery, where we saw some of the work of mass design there too. Did anyone here ever go on a walking tour or civil rights pilgrimage? That's great, good. It's important to learn together by traveling through the landscape, by moving our bodies through space. And as more people had the opportunity to learn and absorb new knowledge, public opinion shifted. More residents believed that we didn't need to settle for white supremacist symbols defining our public space. In 2019 and 2020, Kristen Zakis and I organized Take 'Em Down Seaville and Monumental Justice Virginia to campaign to change Virginia state law to allow the removal of statues. So who out here went to Richmond to lobby the General Assembly? Oh, good, I'm seeing some hands, that's great. And I don't know if, is Sally Hudson, is Delegate Sally Hudson, she was here last night, but big thanks to her. So in 2019, Virginia's neo-Confederate organizations, including the one that was at that moment a plaintiff that was suing the city of Charlottesville, organized at the General Assembly to maintain the statues law. And we were disappointed when the bill was quashed in a subcommittee. But we organized again the next year and lobbied some more. And the 2020 session of the Virginia General Assembly had the highest proportion of African Americans elected to state office since Reconstruction. And it's no coincidence that the statue removal law finally passed. Oh. And here I acknowledge Dolores McQuinn, Mamie Locke, so many people that did the work on that. To its credit, Albemarle County was the first Virginia municipality to act on the new state law when it took effect in 2020. And the county removed a 111-year-old Johnny Reb Confederate soldier statue from in front of the county courthouse. But then county officials gave the statue to an organization which promotes lost cause narratives of the Civil War. Racial justice activists were troubled by this. And this is when I approached Andrea and said, if Charlottesville ever removes its statues, now remember, we were still under an injunction by a judge at this point, even though the law had changed. If Charlottesville ever removes its statues, we need to make sure that they don't fall into the wrong hands. What can we do? I have an idea. And I remembered those Blue Ribbon Commission meetings a few years earlier when exasperated community members would say, just melt it. And I started making some calls to some foundries, and most did not want to be involved. In 2019, 2020, and 2021, armed vigilantes who called themselves statue protectors patrolled our parks and accosted passersby right up until the last night before the statues were removed. And it took a while for the lawsuits to be resolved in 2021, but finally, Charlottesville removed its statues. And here I want to acknowledge Devon Henry and Team Henry crew. Where are you, Devon? Devon and where are you? There. Yeah, stand up. Both of y'all, stand up. Thank you, Devon. Devon, had a lot of bravery and has done a lot of work around Virginia and all up and down the East Coast, frankly, to help communities like ours. So. But with the removal, then we had a question, which was what to do with these material objects, because objects take up space. and no space is politically or morally neutral. We don't want to ship our toxic waste to another community. Our community, especially the youth, the nation, and international observers were and are watching Charlottesville. I was then the director of the UVA Memory Project, and this was a perch that allowed a group of us, Andrea, Frank, Lisa, Claire, some of us in here, to do some planning. And Swords into Plowshares came into being, and we crafted a proposal to City Council, allow the Jefferson School African American Heritage Center to take ownership of the Lee statue and melt it down. The Jeff School, a modest but mighty Black nonprofit, would steward the SIP project, the Swords into Plowshares project, on behalf of the community. Give it up for the Jeff School. We had a lot of support from community organizations. Raise your hand if your organization signed a letter of support for Swords into Plowshares. All right, thank you. And so when City Council gave the Lee statue to the Jeff School, we were sued almost immediately. Fortunately, that was resolved thanks to our wonderful attorneys, Seth Ragosta and Chris Tate. And Chris was here last night. I don't know if they're here tonight. So we melted the Lee statue, and here I want to thank our silent partners, our foundrymen who stepped in and were so brave and did such hard work. Thank you. The molten bronze, yeah, let's give them a hand. The molten bronze was formed into bricks, and now we have 2 tons of these bronze ingots like the one in the hallway that you see. And the question now is how to transform this material, and in the process, transform public space. Swords into Plowshares is leading a discussion on an international stage of what messages our public spaces transmit. We in Charlottesville are talking about racial justice and democratic inclusion. We're thinking in a very deliberate way about what stories we want to lift up and tell to edify our community and the world. These are ugly times: violence, wars, the abduction of immigrants from our streets, trampling of civil liberties, hateful discourse from some of the highest offices in the land. Why, some might ask, should we concern ourselves with a public art project? We need art now more than ever. Our goal is not to erase history, far from it. This is the fun part. This is where we get to imagine how public art and the process of creating it can reflect the ideals of multiracial democracy. And our guests here are proposing ideas for what that might look like. We will use the raw materials of our painful history to remember. We'll go forward to tell a more inclusive story by creating something beautiful. And now I want to introduce my partner in crime. No, really, we were called that. That's what the plaintiff said. My partner in crime, my collaborator, Dr. Andrea Douglas.
Good evening. They pull the shades down in anticipation of the presentations. If you've ever been on a tour with me, on one moment you would be asked to come into this auditorium. Y'all, you know I don't like these things. Come into this auditorium, and I would ask people to be on the stage, and we'd ask them to look out the window. And the reason why I'm doing that is today is the 14th. On February 20th, we celebrated the 100th anniversary of the opening of this space. And on March 22nd, we will recognize another important date. And that is the passing of the Public Assemblage Act, which makes this place even more important than ever. So you're looking at the original floors. You're looking at an auditorium with 6 classrooms that went from an education space to a space of community gathering. And so I am struck by the fact that we're sitting here 100 years later, looking both behind us and ahead of us. I'm also struck by the fact that the exhibition, the design teams, the boards that you all have had opportunity to peruse have been embedded in the history of this place. We start with the history of enslavement as you walk in. We then bring you to the early origins of this school. And then we bring you into this gathering space that since 2013 has been the place where the Charlottesville has come to have its hard conversations. We talk about 2017, the Monday after that horrible day, the community came here. Long before all the other people who came to tell us what we should be thinking, we came here and we thought about ourselves. Part of the heart of Swords and the Plowshares is that we can cure ourselves. We don't need outsiders. And almost every single person in this room that I look out, you all were there. You understand what that means. And so what we've done here is given the history. So we hope that you walk into the Contemporary Gallery and take a tour with us from 2019 through 2023. Come out of that gallery and then ask yourselves, why? What are we doing? Well, what we're doing is embedding this project in the history of the land, because the question now is, where do you put it? Right? How does the land carry the histories? I had an email once that said, and excuse my language, that if you take down our statue and replace it with that nigger statue, we're coming for it. Guess what? We're not worried about that. We have brought to you the three most prolific thinkers on the subject of landscape, memory, community, collective memory that is out there. We were able to do that after looking at 32 different responses to our request for qualifications, and we were able to narrow it down to these three design teams. So I'm not going to take up any more time. I just want you to know that we believe that it's not the Heritage Center that's making these decisions. It's all of you. At some point, there's a ballot over there. You can make a decision tonight. I hope you won't. I hope you'll do some deep thinking. I hope you'll go to sipseville.com, where you have access to the exhibition, all of the design proposals, and an opportunity to cast and give us your opinion. But I don't think that tonight is the night that you do that. I think tonight you give it a lot of thinking and you listen to the people who've come to talk to you about their projects. So without further ado, we're going to do this alphabetically. Sorry, Walter. We're going to begin with hood design, then mass design, and then push design. And I want to thank you all for joining us on this journey. It's been a long time coming, but guess what? Here we are. Thank you.
You want to take it off?
Good evening, everyone. How's everyone doing? Wow. This is the beginning of another step in the process. And being an H, we start out the process. But I'd like to give a shout out to the other two teams that you will hear from tonight, my esteemed colleagues. Their work is profound, and you guys are going to have a really hard choice. But we'd like to take our 20 minutes and explain our project to you. But first, I'd like to start out with a short video that describes pretty much our process or our inspiration.
bent. In Africa, if your knees are bent, you're alive. If your legs are straight, you're dead. You might as well bury you.
One of the first dances slaves created is the ring shout. The ring shout is a spiritual experience. Dancers bless their lives as they move, including their labor, digging potatoes, picking cotton, or rocking the baby. Ralph Ellison, the 20th century writer, called these dances America's first choreography.
For white Americans, this is a new kind of body language that for them is tremendously exciting. To put your elbows out, to plant your feet flat, to be able to move your knees and your hips. It's threatening, it's scary. Some of them tell their children not to do it, but it's starting to become part of the national culture.
For centuries, blacks and whites watch and imitate each other's movements. This continual interplay among the nation's diverse population is producing a rich vernacular dance tradition.
Another term that's loosely used to substitute for the term vernacular is,
Can you guys click it?
but it doesn't mean exactly the same thing. Vernacular means the dance in its own environment, where it is born, the original dance of those people, where you find them.
Thank you. The clicker wasn't working. But that gives you a sense of, we were inspired by this dance, and our piece is called Ring and Shouting. And we're inspired by this because working with the community in Charlottesville, we want people to dance, we want people to shout as we think about memory.
It is our honor to be here tonight, truly, for many reasons, but we're a design studio. We're based in Oakland, California, but we have been here, we've worked here. We call ourselves a social art practice. We're landscape architects, urban designers, artists, conservators. And the way that we see our work is we see it in these three dimensions: life with, everyday, and commemoration. All of our projects carry a component of all those three, some more heavy on one than the other. And this is why this project, when we heard about it, we're like, we gotta be there. It's our passion. We're a group of 20 designers, and tonight, Walter Hood is here, our creative director, Sarita Schreiber, who is our art practice director, and myself, Alma Dusolier, I'm a landscape architect. But in many of our projects, I focus on how do we engage our community and design those processes to make that meaningful and respectful.
This idea of ring and shouting, we want to make witness tree rings with you. And this idea from a disturbed memorial landscape, we want to invite people to gather, have conversations, and imagine a future shaped by peace rather than supremacy. I think one of the things that distinguishes our design from the other two is we don't want to go vertical again. We want to go horizontal. We want to engage landscape. And the tree rings basically will take on the drip line of historic trees throughout Charlottesville. And they will form these places of gathering. And they will gather around a time and a place. The ring shout, as I just showed, is a powerful and enduring cultural tradition. We've worked in the South. I'm from North Carolina. We worked in South Carolina, Georgia, Texas, and hopefully in Virginia, and also in Virginia. But we wanted to get something, pick up on a heritage, a practice that we can continue to engage multiple races of people to have a conversation. And conceptually in our brain, before I start showing the projects, we want to gather in places where the trees have gathered. And we want people on a specific date to shout out a memory. We don't care what that memory is. We want the dialectic to be there. And once those memories come together through a process, we want to gather them and then forge a ring. And the ring is basically a metaphor for the tree. We want to work with a dendronologist who will help us go through and understand the different times. A dendronologist will help us know that maybe back in 1870 there was a big snowstorm, but there was also a lynching, that there was also a meal taking place. The tree bears that history. There is a stump, a piece over by our piece here, and it's from the cemetery. We think it's 160 years old. And you can actually find a disturbance, but you can also find different places in time through that tree. Come on, clicker. We were first taken by this notion of the tree-bearing witness about 20 years ago in California. This is the new DeYoung Museum. This is the old DeYoung Museum. When they the Loma Prieta tore that thing down, people went crazy when Herzog and Demeron proposed this big thing. But we had 110-year-old palm trees that we pushed the director to save. We took those trees away and we bought them back. When that machine building went up, those old trees allowed San Franciscans to go, there's something that I remember, and people hug those trees. We don't know what we don't know until we lose them, and then when we get them back. Clicker. For my friends, the clicker is a little clicky. This is Charlottesville. When we first started out, I asked the question, you guys have any important trees? And of course you do. I think there was like 25 very important trees that you guys love on your list. They're oak trees, they're pine trees, etc. But we said, what if we started there, but what if we also looked at the larger landscape, and if we could find different trees from different times? And what if we jumped over to Monticello? What if we jumped over to Monroe and found those trees that could tell those stories? Could those be the places where we could begin to have these conversations? Go out again, have conversations with all of Charlottesville, not just within a post-colonial or typological park, but within the landscape itself. And from there, in 1955, we might find a locust tree, and we might find someone might say, well, Louis Armstrong performed here in 1955, but maybe 700 children got polio shots. Maybe families of black students in Charlottesville apply to transfer to white schools. But all of these memories might come back as we start to find these places in time. Queen Elizabeth on the Mall, or the pedestrian malls being completed, or the National Convention by an African American, or 4 black students in 1961, or school administrations are limited to a total number of schools to be 36. But let the trees prompt us at different points in time to have different conversations. Or Seal, a googie-eyed mutt adopted by students and staff from the University of Virginia in 1940, he passed away. But at the same time, a new business school for Negroes was started. And what we're trying to say is memory is dialectical. And the reason why we don't have collective memory, why we have ostensible and why we have invented memory is because we don't have conversations with one another about those differences. But what if we did? What if that melted material forced us to have a conversation that could be liquefied and flowed, that didn't form up to become another sentinel, but became something that we could actually disagree with and love each other at the same time? This ingot, we find, produces this point of alchemy. I have to say, you guys have done a lot of work. We're just in the middle of this journey with you guys. You've already created a social process. What you've done already has changed America. It's changed the landscape of America. The object doesn't matter, guys. Imagine those meetings that you guys were in, all of that. That's shaped it. That's a collective memory. When she asks you how many people went to meetings, how many people did this, that's collective. That's power.
Calling and shouting.
That's calling, that's ringing and shouting, right? But these pieces, how can we reimagine them differently? How can they take on another life? And that's what we hope to imagine together. We don't know what they're going to look like. So when you look at our board, we just got these rings. We don't know what they're going to be. That's the possibilities through these conversations that we want to work with you guys on. And it's going to be a lot of work. It's going to be just as hard as getting to the point where we are today. But at Hood Design, we love materials. We've worked with materials in different ways. I think our process is about alchemy. You know, we've done memorials, but we love materials to come together. And we love to be, Art Smith is one of our, we love art, mid-century modern jewelry maker. But can you imagine these rings becoming something fantastical, something ephemeral? Something that might bear witness, right, to a moment in time. Something that might allow us to numerate on something very different. Something that might be natural. It might be not something hard, but something soft. Might be something afoot. We know we have the pedestal that we can deal with. We have more inert material. But how do we take, again, the ingot and allow for alchemy to produce the unknown? This horizontal new piece will enwrap the tree. Maybe image might be produced. Maybe text might be produced. We love reflection. Reflection has always been a big part of our culture. At the shadow catcher down at UVA, we love the reflection. When the sun comes out, you get a shadow, and Kitty gets that portal to heaven. But can we be metaphorical only through an allegory, not through an object? And as I said, material allows us to understand light, shadow, and the unknown. And this is one of the things that we think this project will allow us to produce. And when we think of the ring does not have to be something consistent. The ring might find itself pure in one hand, but might leak out and find itself like the root of trees. Someone told me today, my artist friend who's here, she's searching for witness trees in Alabama, and the roots are still there under the ground. And she's able to find the underground roots to know where the tree was actually buried. But that idea that we can begin to investigate the ground plane, the life together. And again, at the end of the day, the journey would continue even more for the next generation. So what we're going to be asking, Ritual as Healer, we're going to have 22 Ring Shout events. It's going to be in 22 neighborhoods. We're going to try to go to 2 plantations. We're going to have 24 witness rings that will take place over 1 year. So it will be a year of ringing and shouting, a year of meeting. And imagine we might have 3 a day. We might have 5 a day. But that would become the process. Again, something that the nation could look down and go, you see those people in Charlottesville? They're actually meeting. They're actually celebrating. And they're actually creating a different future. They're not stuck on a thing.
You can click. So how does this work? What we are proposing is we show you that map that has all of these notable trees as a beginning. Again, this presentation today is what we see is the beginning, it's a framework. The idea is to go and visit different neighborhoods. As you have already done a lot of the outreach, you've already engaged with many neighborhoods. That map of entire city of Charlottesville for us represented that we don't need to be specific. We can try to reach out. And whomever welcomes us to have one of these events, we tap ourselves to one of their trees that they recognize. So it doesn't have to be necessarily from that notable trees list. Because for communities, if I ask you right now, think of a tree that is meaningful to you, a picture comes into your mind immediately. So we want to ask that question and begin to use those trees that have bear witness to our events to come together. And the search is to, you can keep clicking, is to really find sharing of events that don't necessarily, it can be very mundane. Like, do you remember that huge storm that got us all back into our houses and that put us together one moment? That's an example. The idea is that once we collect all of those stories during the first year, with that information, we generate the ideas for each of the rings to be unique. And again, as Walter was saying, they can shape different shapes. It could be words embedded. So we're creating a framework, as you see in our boards, that looks like a shiny object that can be stainless steel as a frame, and all the bronze is embedded, inlaid, wrapped around, depending on what the community, the specific ring wants to see. All the rings get fabricated on year 2, and we raise them into this tower. In the center of this tower, there's the plantation of one tree, the planting of one tree, one white pine. The rings piled up into a tower. But eventually, we start removing them and offering them back to the community that gave us the words and the memories that form the design of each of the rings. With the hope, as you can see on that map on our boards, that you end up with one memory ring in your community around the tree that collected the memory, the shared memories, and it becomes a reminder that we're not going back to take over the space that once not given to all of us, but instead now the whole city shares the memories.
And it might look something like this in a simplified way: a seat, an area. So imagine moving through Charlottesville and seeing these brilliant kind of strange things finding themselves, that the memory that they once towered together collectively, and now they're singular, and they could become a place of respite, a place where people might gather, a place where storytelling might happen, but also it engages the tree. Now someone might ask, well, what if the tree dies? You can move to another tree or plant a tree, right? Because the tree is life, right? And this notion then of thinking about the future, it's not through the inert material, but it's through something that's alive, something that's brilliant. And we know that this is a highly conceptualized project to be able to do this, but we really feel strongly that coming this far to actually build something static means it's over. And like with a lot of our clients, they want it to be over. People want it to be over. It's not over. It's kind of a beginning. And that's the renewal aspect of life. And so we'd like to end just with this proverb. And we thought this was very relevant, that the axe forgets, right? That taking down forgets, but the tree remembers. And remember, swords into plowshares. And I'll give my minute and a half over to my colleagues. Thank you guys very much.
I failed to say earlier that we are joined by an offsite that is at the University of Virginia in Campbell 125. So there are people here in this room, and there are people over there, and there are also people watching on live stream. So this is our intent, is to be able to bring as many people as possible to this project. And I want to give you a charge before we invite Mass Design. For every single person who is in this room, there's almost 170 of you. Each one of you, if you will, tell somebody. Because this is how we are going to be able to have our full community participate in this. So that's your charge. You have a friend, bring your friend in. You all have friends, bring your friend in. Because this is truly the community's project. We're just here to help it along. But we are not going to get to any of the things that you will see tonight if you all don't really dig in with us. So I want you to know that. So can I invite the team from Mass Design up, please?
Good evening, everyone. Y'all can do a little bit better than that. Good evening, everyone. Okay, thank you. That is better. Can anyone hear the soundscape? Yes, some people can. Wonderful. That's important. First, I want to express deep gratitude for the years of bravery and determination that have brought us all here for this moment. We, myself, my deep friend Dana, are both honored and humbled to be here and excited to share our thinking with you. For those of you that were here last night, you might have heard my voice struggle. I figured out that it is the allergies. Thank you, Virginia. So I have some Claritin, and I am excited to actually be able to voice that excitement with you all tonight. So thank you, Walter, for preparing me for this clicker. Both Dana King and I have dedicated our professional practices to expanding narratives in the public realm. And in doing so, be able to challenge how history has chosen to remember and ignore very often the contributions of marginalized groups, specifically Black and brown groups, and perhaps even more specifically, Black and brown women. So we come to this particular project with a wealth of experience and personal conviction. We are intent on combating the erasure and spatial harm that is perpetuated by our current public memory landscape. We also come to this project with the capacity and compassion for a deeply engaged and patient process, one that will continue to build on the community stewardship demonstrated by you lovely folks to date. And with that, I will briefly introduce myself and say that I am Jadi Amazi. I am a principal at Mass Design Group, and I have the distinct pleasure of being the director of our Public Memory and Memorials Lab. As a nonprofit design collective, MASS, which stands for Model of Architecture Serving Society, we are invested in understanding and honestly, in some cases, co-inventing the ways in which we can collectively curate multivocal, radically diverse, and cathartic spaces that are rooted in truth-telling and ultimately joy. Across our larger team of designers, artists, and consultants, we are pulling on decades of lessons learned from both projects we've worked on independently as well as through our varied collaborations. And we certainly look forward to learning even more with you all through this process. Reflecting specifically on learnings, during our site visit last September, our team was admittedly a little overwhelmed. I know some folks raised their hands and said that they have taken a tour with the Jeff School with Dr. Douglas. You feel that for days. That information, that history is very palpable and it sticks to your bones. And so we were overwhelmed by these histories of racial terror and spatial violence committed against the African American communities. And that's a story that's not unfamiliar with cities across our country, but it felt different being here, witnessing it in these ways. And thinking about the raising of communities such as McKee Row and Vinegar Hill demonstrates decades of attempts to undermine the growth and agency of the Black community. And then the infiltration of symbols of supposed dominance and power further reinforced those attempts. But what resonated with us even more were the stories of determination, self-actualization, and persistence of the same said African American and Black communities here in Charlottesville, and how those lessons actually permeated throughout the diaspora. We were also deeply moved by the solidarity in your diverse stronghold that our country saw in response to 2017, a solidarity that continues to fuel the possibility of this project. And so for us, we understand that Swords into Plowshares has fundamentally shifted what is possible in this debate of what to do with these tokens of oppression. And we are inspired by the exhaustively brave process that has led us here tonight. So with that bravery, we decided that the most brave response was to be in direct dialogue with what was, to confront the tension of the Lee statue directly. Of the multiple sites that were proposed, our team felt most drawn to Market Street Park because we see the filling of that void as a reclamation of space and a deliberate transference of energy. We heard stories of how longtime residents avoided the park long before and certainly after the tragic events of the rally, and we saw this project as an invitation to shift that invisible yet palpable power dynamic.
Good evening. The foundation of our concept is divine feminine, the divine feminine, that holds space for others, nurtures abundance and joy, extends inclusion to others, and expands love, justice, and mercy in discord. Anyone can actualize their divine feminine. It's not a gender thing. It's an open-hearted connectedness thing. Our design is called Rooted. It is embodied in the form of the baobab tree. The baobab is known as the tree of life, a sacred symbol of life and rebirth. It's a magnificent tree. It grows in abundance on the continents of Africa and Australia and is in Brazil and Madagascar. African descendants of enslaved people in the Caribbean actually believe that the tree grows there because its seeds were carried in the hair, necklaces, and earrings of captives during the transatlantic slave trade. Children grew up to believe that if they visited the tree during a full moon, a hole would open up and carry them back to Africa. The baobab is an iconic symbol for the African diaspora, a connective tissue for those whose roots are now planted elsewhere. Culturally, these living giants are gathering places for storytelling, shared meals, celebrations, rites of passage, in other words, community. They produce super nutritious foods and strong bark that nourish both humans and elephants alike. In the places where they grow abundantly, baobabs are revered for their longevity and immense trunks, which are often used as shelter. They provide safety from the elements. Our baobab personifies the multifaceted experiences of that shelter as home. Home as a place where memories grow and comfort lives. Home where connectedness is nurtured, strengthened, and celebrated. In this country, the economics of home are the origin story of every story of success. Black Americans have been denied the bedrock of home and home ownership far more than any other Americans, and yet we are still here. Systemic racism and urban development policies that worked against the common good until the Fair Housing Act was passed in 1968 slowed but didn't stop our participation. For instance, the neighborhoods in Charlottesville that grew from the entrepreneurial initiative taken by John West. West bought his first property in 1872 at the age of 23, and by the time he was 50 years old, he owned more than 100 properties, becoming the first of the 400 a phrase used to identify wealthy African Americans in Charlottesville. John West and others like him chose to live here and become an integral part of Charlottesville, to stay and build this community and make it a wonderful place for their families. They stayed to build homes and churches, participate in its schools, civic and professional life, and guide standards that were crafted long ago and are still evident today. Being rooted is the promise of renewal, building on itself generation after generation. Rooted will be installed, as you've heard, in Market Street Park. It reflects and honors the people who carved the path then and now, who have chosen to stay here despite the past. The entire design, both the tree and park, reminds us of our power as people, the power to amplify community by infusing it with love and unity, not hate and division. A place where the whole truth of American history can be told freely, all 360 degrees of it. By reclaiming Market Street Park, spatial justice transforms a place historically defined by racist exclusion and intimidation into one designed for peaceful coexistence. An accessible outdoor space encircles the Baobab as a magnetic gathering place for multi-ethnic, multi-generational exchange. Seasonal plantings of flowers and food crops surround the central access, bringing engagement and beauty to the park. Think about a program where kids and elders garden together, planting and caring for strawberries and blackberries, green beans, collards, and peas, while crocuses lead the way with spring flowers. Rooted's highest aspiration is to create a sense of welcome, wonder, and belonging for everyone who visits. Rooted inhabits space, and space is power. It connects memory and identity, both individual and collective. Art in public places helps shape what we remember and determine how we are remembered. The initial design started as one tree surrounded by people, and we soon realized that no person, no group of people could adequately tell this history from hate to hope. So the tree was split into 7 pillars, 7 parts, in order to create a center to carry events and other programming based on the community's desires. Opening the baobab to the sky makes room for community engagement so that old memories can be shared and new ones made. And at 27 feet tall, no matter where you are in Charlottesville proper, if you can see the top of it, it declares that your presence is welcome and celebrated there. Rooted's 7 bronze pillars stand in the round, and once you're inside of it, you will experience the spirit of movement. It's obvious that these objects are static, but they animate into dancers right before your eyes, encircling you with arms intertwined and inseparable. They dance because they can, transforming the traumas of the past into expressions of joy. Hundreds of handprints from community members like you are pressed into the base of each pillar, part of our further community engagement. We will spend time here to imprint the hands of descendants of Charlottesville's enslaved and formerly enslaved families, and all others who have been part of the Swords to Plowshares project to any degree or at any point in time. When castings of these hands are finished, They'll be molded to fit the bottom quarter of each pillar, encouraging visitors to lay their hands on them. The beauty of bronze is that it's warm to the touch in the summer and cool to the touch in fall, because bronze is a living metal. So when you touch the pillars, your fingerprints become part of the sculpture too. The colors of the pillar are gorgeous and warm: mahogany, black, gold, with a hint of chestnut, representing the melanated skin of Black people. In a truncated version of Runat Nia Igbo's poem called The Image of Me, it asks, "Lord, why did you make me black?" And God answers, "I made you the color of coal, from which beautiful diamonds are formed. I made you the color of oil, the black gold that keeps people warm. I made you from the rich, dark earth that can grow the food you need. Your color's the same as the panther's, known for her beauty and speed. Your color's the same as the black stallion, a majestic animal is he. I didn't make you in the image of darkness. I made you in the image of me." Rooted invites everyone to share its space, intentionally at first, but it will become second nature, enjoying one another, celebrating the essential things that we have in common. And when you do visit, Rooted will provide you with a multi-sensory experience. Artist Eric Addis recorded the energy patterns of a living baobab and translated it into music, which has been softly playing throughout our presentation. So I'd like us to listen to the baobab for about 10 seconds, because what we'll hear is its beating heart.
And this layer of soundscape is another opportunity to further embed the community. We envision a collaboration with local and or youth musicians so that this soundscape can be composed to fully ground the site in the harmonies that resonate the most with those who have shepherded this process and will continue to be stewards of the project in the future. We think about the design approach in 5 layers, beginning first with the park as a whole. We envision the primary walkways could be reconfigured to reflect the Fowohaji Adinkra, representing freedom and the responsibility that comes with independence. These accessible pathways across the park and plaza would welcome all mobility needs, which would then be a kinetic rewriting of how visitors currently move through the site. At the base, sorry y'all, this clicker is rude. You said it was difficult, Walter, not impossible. All right, I'm gonna keep talking. Jamira, do you mind going to the next slide for me, because it is skipping? Apologies, folks. I'm gonna just stay right here with it. Oh, I'm not even doing that anymore. You know what? Let God. We're gonna stay nowhere. Excellent. Follow along, friends. We can bring you to the boards. At the base of the tree is the form of the Anansi in Tontan, which is another Adinkra. And that brings notions of wisdom and creativity to the weaving together of the community gardens and gathering spaces that Dana spoke to earlier, that you all hopefully now have embedded in your minds from seeing it a moment ago. Custom brick pavers place the plaza in dialogue with its surroundings, engaging historical ties to the labor of both enslaved and free Black communities. I'm gonna try one more time because I saw Dr. Douglas go over there. Nope, we gonna leave it. As Dana shared, the baobab tree anchors the site, honoring the presence of Black descendants of American enslavement and the persistence of generations who have thrived thereafter. The passageways invite all into the center, totaling 7, to reference a number of completeness. On the interior, the aforementioned handprints and soundscapes curated during our year-long engagement sessions will reflect our connected efforts and encircle the primary gathering space for the site. This bronze tree of life and set amongst these West African Adinkra symbols will symbolize leadership, freedom, wisdom, and creativity, while signaling inclusion to African descendants and expressing regeneration and connectedness for all. It calls for us to enjoy the space together as neighbors. And the 5th and final layer of this 5-part design would be sculptures of life-giving fruit, flower, and seeds from the baobab tree, extending the welcoming spirit of this mother tree into sites across the city, enabling a dialogue and empowering community members to imagine alternative futures. And we have some of those seeds in the back of the room under our board. The determination of the form ultimately and the locations of those scattered seeds would be another of the various opportunities for the community to contribute to the design process. And as is typical with all of our projects, we approach this work with a deep understanding that we are accompanying communities in the co-creation of living and participatory spaces, and value that this history cannot be constrained to a singular site or narrative, and so the distribution of the memorial and of the seeds is pretty critical. Ultimately, I'm going to try this one more time. Nope, that's fine. Lastly, I will say that ultimately, the project and the process that births it is meant to be a resounding reminder that all are welcome to put down roots. Thank you.
Testing. Okay, great. Okay. We're going to try this one last time for everyone. Good evening, everyone. Thank you. I appreciate you all being here and staying for this final presentation. My name is Glenn. Let's see. Let's see if I can do this now. Yes. My name is Glenn LaRue Smith. I'm the co-founder of Push Studio, landscape design and urban design practice based in Washington, D.C. Here with my partner, Vincent Husvet Camacho, a co-founder and managing partner. And also a member of our team is Public Engagement Associates with Steve Brigham, Kim Sesko, and Hala Hayes, and our historic preservation consultant, Jeffrey Free Harris, and Jordan Weber, our artist from New York City, wasn't able to make it tonight. So, is that, yes, okay. It's working for us. So I'm going to talk a bit about our design process, which we think is very important. So we're guided by 3 core steps, which includes reveal, inspire, and shape. So each core step builds upon the other with community input as a strategic element. Reveal is our approach to exploring all the historical, cultural, and environmental, political, and other aspects of the project site as they relate to the client and the client needs and the community needs. This is, in a sense, an archaeological dig into the heart of a place and its people and its physical context. And also this is accomplished through site-based research, archival and field investigations, and through this, the place reveals itself to us. Then we go into inspire, which we think is a very important step, which involves information gained from the reveal step to inspire participation through site-specific design narratives. This becomes a more intensive community engagement step where the client, the community, and other stakeholders become an integral part of the project team. Team in capital letters, because it not only includes us as a professional team, but it becomes a much bigger team that includes the community and stakeholders. So this is an important step because it helps us say to the client and the community, we understand that the project cannot be successful unless you contribute to and buy into how the design process is progressing. These hands-on interviews, design labs, historical discussions help us link closely to the community, and Kim will be discussing our community engagement steps. The next step in our process is shape, and this is a step that allows the team to develop a form for the open spaces and the regenerative art features. The team artist, Jordan Weber, is key in this step of the process. He creates an art in action dialogue with the community to shape a design expression within each park, each of the 6 parks. Vincent will be discussing how we came about creating sculptural expressions within the 6 parks in Charlottesville. Our proposal works to shape a collaborative physical and spatial art expression for each of these 6 parks. So this personally is a very powerful image for me, and one that I brought to the team in terms of the idea of land, which Vincent will also get into. So I want to, before Free, our historian, comes up and gives us a little bit of historical context, I want to leave this impression with you with a few sentences from our proposal board. The vision is clear for LandForge: to create spaces that heal wounds, celebrate resilience, and invite all people into the ongoing work of equity and belonging. LandForge is both a reminder of what has been lost and a call to action for what can still be forged together. Oh, yes, I'll click for you.
Good evening. You all can hear me well? Good. So, my name is Jeffrey Harris. I'm a Hampton, Virginia-based historian and historic preservation consultant. And as an historian, I tend to focus on context. I often tend to try to find ways to incorporate all the things I find historically within a larger historical narrative. So the reason that I asked to include this image of Ziona Bryant is because I had the pleasure of being asked by Rob Shetterly to write the companion biography for this portrait. And through that research, I was introduced a little more closely to what's happened here in Charlottesville, but through her eyes. And I felt, once I was asked to join this team, it felt a little serendipitous that I had had that opportunity years ago to actually come back to Charlottesville in this capacity as an historian to help provide context for the team through the work that they're going to do with the community. Next slide. As an historic preservationist, I love how the intangible can become tangible, specifically when you engage a place where history has happened. This team will engage communities in terms of the places where history has happened. So, my ultimate role is sort of Dickensian. I see myself as simultaneously the ghost of Christmas past, present, and future. We look to the past to get informed about our present, and we look to the present to help inspire the future. Thank you.
So, as Glenn mentioned earlier in our process, we have this reveal phase, and I am very sort of passionate about history and the archaeologist of the group. And so as a team, we really conducted a deep dive historical study for all 6 parks. And what you see here is the 6 parks that were given to us. And each site revealed layered histories tied to plantation land, refuge, home, ownership, and trauma. But the 2 things that started to emerge, the 2 narratives that started to emerge is that, as you see here on your left, Forest Hill Park, Tonsler Park, and Booker T. Washington really began to state a space of Black joy, resilience, and persistence. In contrast, Market Street, Court Square, and Belmont were spaces of exclusion, grief, and trauma. And I know that city of Charlottesville, the citizens know this. So together, the 6 parks really formed a connected narrative of Black life in Charlottesville. So as a team, we made the decision to engage all 6 parks with regenerative art that honors the past and imagines a just future. So as we deep dived into the reveal, again, this is all in-house, just the team, we were looking for the next phase of Inspire. And as we spoke with the artist, with our other group members or team members, we were looking for that unifying medium, and the answer was right under our feet. It was the land itself. It was the soil. And the soil served as both material and metaphor, surfacing stories and linking all 6 sites. As we moved from thinking of soil as the material, we asked ourselves, well, what is the technique to take this soil into form? And the idea of rammed earth was what we chose. This is an ancient technique that uses soil, and in modern times, you add a bit of cement and it creates a solid form, a layered form. It opened our eyes to the opportunity for the earth, the soil, to be literally collected from sites locally here in Charlottesville, potentially the state of Virginia, and why not nationally? The land becomes the narrator of struggle, place, and resilience. So now, as the team, we had to kind of look at what would these forms be. And we came up with, at this moment, the towers and pillar forms. The 2 towers would act as central anchors. One of these towers would emerge from Booker T. Washington Park, and it highlights the park's Black joy, its festivals, its known identity as the space, the Black space here in Charlottesville. By contrast, the other tower would rise from Market Street Park. And the focus for that was it needed a regeneration, it needed a reclaiming of that Black narrative. The pillars would then occupy the other 4 sites. And just like the other teams, when we did the tours, each of those other 4 sites had very unique neighborhoods, very unique citizens or residents. And so those 4 pillars would be expressed by the neighborhood-specific narrative, stories. The pillars would then create a stepping stone journey connecting stories and linking the 2 towers. So now we have the bronze ingots as part of that material to be used. And working with our artists and the team, we had to think about how to regenerate that heavily loaded material. What we envisioned here in the towers is we wanted to try to flip the script and recognize a monumentality of something like soil as an exterior skin. And unlike the Robert E. Lee statue that had its bronze on its exterior pushing on power, we thought of the bronze as an interior skin where an individual would be able to understand, recognize, and feel that more intimate expression of the bronze. The bronze would be layered with symbols and stories that would be community-driven. The bronze ingots is now transformed and changed. In the pillars, in the other 4 neighborhoods, we envision using those bronze ingots as additional strata that wraps around the pillars. And similar to the interior skin of the towers, the symbols and stories would be community driven. So with the pillars and towers, we wanted to back up and recognize. I think it skipped one. Thank you. We wanted to recognize that the Jefferson School has already done amazing work. And one of the things that we really took from was the public tours. So what we see is that these towers, these pillars, can potentially become those storytelling beacon that carries on this, what we term as a narrative, black narrative network diagram that you see here. So everything that you saw, the forms and what we went through, that was all in-house. You know, we were given this proposal and we really had to kind of think of that, but that is just the beginning. The next step is the artist in residence phase, and that specifically brings the community and our regenerative landscape artist, Jordan Weber, to collaborate directly through workshops and sessions that are led by our artists. We expect that these forms will evolve with that input. The final work is created with the community, shaped by your voices and your lived experiences.
Thank you. Can I give you this? Dr. Douglas said, "We don't need outsiders telling us what to do." And that just happens to be the core of our public engagement model. You are the community experts, and we are the vehicle that helps you reach that vision. My name is Kim Sesko. I'm a managing principal at Public Engagement Associates. I am joined by my other principal, Steve Brigham. Together, we have more than 20 years of experience ensuring that communities can provide input on issues that impact their lives and their neighborhoods. Now, parks hold a special place in many communities. It's where we take our children, we hold our cookouts, we skateboard, scooter, power walk. It's what brings us together and creates a sense of belonging, those neighborhoods. And I know many of us can remember a neighborhood we really loved as an adult or a child. This community engagement process starts with the people. It's a community-led approach where we are meeting people where they are. We are creating opportunities and activities for you to provide input in this process to help you realize your vision. It starts with our artists in residence and our Plowshares Design Consultation Group. This is 25 to 30 descendants, residents, and activists who will advise the artist and collaborate with him as we revision and design this artscape. A part of our outreach team would be the neighborhood ambassadors. This is something that was in the first phase and that we have used many times in different communities. These are 8 representatives from the various neighborhoods around the 6 sites, as well as some citywide residents, and they would represent our voices and help us within the outreach process. We also want to make sure that there are youth voices at the table. And we will do that by ensuring that they are participating in these art activities and creating a vision as a part of this legacy. Through that, we'll be hosting different focus groups and story circles to ensure that they are a part of this process. We want them to share their ideas, their experiences, and their vision for these spaces. And we know we can't do this alone. We work with our local outreach partners. Now, these are community leaders, formal and informal community leaders, businesses, organizations, and residents who want to stay involved and connected in the process. And we make sure that we are linking them into the outreach and engagement so they know what is happening and when it's occurring. So how do we accomplish all of this? This is a 5-phase community engagement process. It starts in August of 2026 and goes through October of 2027. The first phase is our planning phase. This is when we work with the Jefferson School and our planning team in order to develop and finalize a detailed community planning plan, a participation plan. This will provide the information on what are the outreach and engagement opportunities. It will include what is the communication and messaging, and more importantly, it will inform the public how you can participate in the process and when you can do that. In that planning stage, we are also identifying our neighborhood ambassadors, design consultation group participants, and ensuring that that input is incorporated into this final outreach plan. In phase 2, we kick off our community collaboration with our artists in residence. So Jordan Weber will be meeting with the design consultation group, and they will begin to collaborate on the first phase of how does this art evolve based on the community input. He will meet with them. He will be here for 3 to 4 weeks as our artist in residence, ensuring that he is collaborating with the community and around the 3 to 4 meetings with the design consultation group. And the goal of this is to ensure that we are revisioning and incorporating your ideas into the design process across all of the 6 sites. In phase 3, this is when the broader community input begins to take form. You will have a draft design of what the art and open space looks like. We would be out in the community, hosting open houses, participating in pop-ups, and using online engagement to ensure that you can participate in this process and share your ideas and vision. The push team will then use this information to, again, create another design, a final design, for you to reflect upon as a broad community. Throughout this process, we're continuing to engage the public. We're continuing to host meetings, attend community meetings, as well as host open houses so you can see the evolution of this design. Once we get to our stage 5, we are looking at our celebration, our art and celebration, recognizing that this vision with the community input is now in its final phase. We will do this by hosting celebrations and meetings and activities throughout the city and all of the 6 sites. This will also leave the Jefferson School and the city of Charlottesville with enough information to proceed with the final plans for the art installation and the landscape design. In closing, I am going to say that this Recast and Reclaim is a bold initiative that addresses a phase of American history that impacts generations. We want to ensure that there are informed and diverse participation in all phases of the community engagement process, and that you as co-creators are able to see this vision as the final result. Thank you.
I was admonished because I didn't have a mic the last time. So not only do I have a mic, but I'm coming down. We are at time, but I know you all are curious. So we're going to make a little shift because we believe in flexibility here at the Heritage Center. Each of the design, friends, we're not doing that. I forgot to tell my team what we're doing, but you've been here before. You know how we move. What we're hoping to do is that we will invite each of the design teams to stand in front of their boards, so that if you have specific questions around any one board, please go to that and you'll be able to talk to the design teams specifically. And please move around. There are other questions, but I understand we were supposed to be finished at 8:30. You all expected that, so some of you have to go. So if there are still questions that you have, I'm here. You all know how to reach me. It's director@jeffschoolheritagecenter.org. We've made it really easy for you to remember that website. The phone number is 688. I don't know my own phone number. I'm not gonna lie. You know how to reach me. So that's how we're planning to do it. Thank you all so very much for coming to listen. I am hoping you all have been inspired. I'm hoping that we'll see you for the long journey ahead of us. It is our greatest hope that, as you can see, many of these projects end in 2027. You know that is another anniversary date for us. So stick with us. We're moving forward. Thank you.